My daughter called me and said, "We changed the locks. You don't live here anymore." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Bold move." 3 days later, she received an urgent letter from a lawyer, and froze. But what shook her more was that I didn't disappear. I acted. Have you ever heard ice crack beneath your feet? At first, it's a faint, almost curious little sound. Then louder. Then everything gives way. That's what her voice sounded like when she told me. We changed the locks. My house. My maple tree by the porch. My reading chair with the stitched arms. My books with notes in the margins. And suddenly, none of it was mine. Because someone decided that old age wasn't about dignity. It was about surrender. That once you hit a certain number, you're supposed to hand over the keys. To your home. Your choices. Your life. I'm 76. My name is Megan Walker. Former physics teacher. Widow. Mother. Grandmother. And, turns out, still a woman with a spine. I live just outside Boston, in the house where I spent nearly all my adult life. The house where my husband and I planted the maple trees, where I made my first Thanksgiving turkey, where Amanda grew up. My daughter. She's married now, Brian, and they live in Brookline with their 2 boys, Ethan and Liam. Loud, funny, chaotic boys. Good kids. I love them more than air. Lately, Amanda had been visiting more often, with concern in her eyes. And sighs. So many sighs. Yes, my right arm aches sometimes. A couple years ago I fell on the ice, and it never fully healed. I don't lift heavy things anymore. But I manage. I cook. I clean. I read. I knit. Just a little slower. But every time Amanda came by, she sighed at my pill bottles. Brian looked a little too long at my bookshelves. Especially at the antique lamp I inherited from Tennessee. And then one day, I went to Philadelphia. Just for a couple of days, to visit my old friend Joan. We hadn't seen each other in more than 10 years. We sat in her backyard, ate cherry pie, laughed about students from the 90s. She's retired too, lives alone. Peacefully. No helpful relatives circling like vultures with plans for your assets. I came home Tuesday afternoon. The sun hit the porch just right. I set down my suitcase, pulled out my key. And it didn't fit. First thought, jammed. Tried the spare. No luck. I walked around to the back door. Same thing. Even the cellar door had a new lock. I stood on the path, heart thudding like a slow drumbeat. I already knew who did it. Only one person in the world feels that entitled to my life. I called Amanda. No answer. Straight to voicemail. Then she called back. Cheerful voice like nothing had happened. "Hi, Mom. You're back already." "Amanda," I said, "the key doesn't work." "None of them. What's going on?" Silence. Then, "We changed the locks," she said. "Mom, we've been thinking. It's just not safe for you to live alone anymore. Brian and I already set everything up. There's a guest room here, and then we're moving forward with Maple Hills. It's beautiful. Trees, fresh air, activities, nurses on site. You'll love it. You're saying I no longer live in my house? Don't say it like that," she rushed in. "It's not like we're taking anything. We paid the deposit ourselves. We'll sell the house only if you agree. No pressure." Something inside me froze. Not grief. Not even anger. Ice. Cold, clear certainty. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't plead. I just said, "I'll find a place to stay for the night. We'll talk tomorrow. Leave the documents on the table." I called a cab. The driver didn't ask questions. Just loaded my bag and pulled away while I stared out the window. That house. My porch. My number on the mailbox. My maple tree. Now someone else's, at least in their minds. I checked into a roadside motel. The kind that smells like old carpet and burned coffee. I laid my things on the bed, sat down slowly. My shoulder throbbed, reminding me that yes, I was 76, but not dead. From the pocket of my suitcase, I pulled out a worn business card. David Russo. Attorney at law. Cambridge. Once he'd just been David. A quiet, troubled junior in my physics class. Always late. Always angry. Everyone gave up on him. But I didn't. I stayed after school. I saw through the sarcasm. He was smart, brilliant even, but broken in all the places kids learn to hide. I made him believe he mattered. He graduated with honors. 10 years later, I got a letter from him. "If it weren't for you," he wrote, "I wouldn't be who I am today." I picked up the phone. My hands weren't shaking. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. From clarity. "Russo Law Office," said a young woman. "How can I help you?" "This is Megan Walker. I need to speak with Mr. Russo." "One moment, please." Click. Then, "Megan." His voice was still familiar. Still warm. Hi, David, I said. I need your help. Legal help. Urgent. When can you come in? Tomorrow. 10 a.m. I'll be waiting. I hung up the phone. No panic. No tears. I felt anchored again. They had locked me out of my own home. But they forgot who I was. This wasn't about real estate. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about voice. Autonomy. The right to exist on my own terms. They thought I would crumble. They miscalculated. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The room still smelled like old coffee and despair. But I didn't feel broken. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my notepad and began to write. Parcel number. Property address. Name on the deed. Bank account access. Power of attorney. I remembered every paper my husband and I ever signed. And now, I'd take it all back. Because no one was going to write me off. Not while I could still hold a pen. When I walked into David's office, he was sitting behind a sleek glass desk in a spacious room overlooking the Charles River. It wasn't what I expected at all, not stuffy, not crowded with paper stacks. The whole space felt modern and sharp, yet somehow warm. There were Harvard diplomas on the wall, photos of graduates shaking hands, and a coffee machine quietly humming in the corner. It didn't feel like a place where people came to beg. It felt like a place where people came to take back what was theirs. Ms. Walker, he said, standing up. Welcome. Megan, I corrected him. Today I'm not a teacher. I'm a client. He smiled and gestured to the chair in front of him. I made some tea. English breakfast okay? Perfect. He sat down, turned on his tablet, and looked at me with the kind of focused attention people rarely give you once you're past 70. I told him everything. From the day I returned from Philadelphia and found myself locked out, to Amanda's cheery phone call telling me I was now supposed to stay with them, and then moved to Maple Hills, a beige-colored place with recliners that smelled like disinfectant and forgotten people. David, I said, you're not a doctor, but tell me honestly, do you think I'm showing signs of dementia? Absolutely not, he said, without missing a beat. I pulled a neat folder out of my bag. Everything was organized by section: property deed, utility bills, tax statements. One tab held a copy of the limited power of attorney I'd given Amanda 3 years ago. It had seemed reasonable back then. She could pick up my prescriptions, pay for Wi-Fi if I forgot. But no financial control. That had been the condition. David flipped through the papers with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what to look for. He paused occasionally, made notes, cross-checked a few things on his laptop. The house is fully in your name, he confirmed. The power of attorney doesn't authorize her to manage your property, access your accounts, or make legal decisions for you. And more importantly, he turned the laptop toward me and tapped the screen. What they did is unlawful. This isn't just a family dispute. This is civil trespassing, illegal eviction, and potentially financial abuse. I don't want to take them to court, I said. But I won't be treated like old furniture either. You shouldn't be, he said. No one has the right to remove you from your home unless a court declares you legally incapacitated. Not even your children. I nodded, then hesitated. There's more, I said quietly. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an old voice recorder. One of those little ones we used to use for audio lessons at school. I knew Massachusetts was a one-party consent state for recordings. And I had started recording, not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd begun to feel afraid. You have, David began, but stopped when I hit play. Amanda's voice. We'll just tell her. She can't manage alone anymore. The house isn't doing her any good. Better to use the money for proper care. Then Brian. She won't understand anyway. Just make it official and be done with it. David leaned back slowly. This is enough to pursue a claim, he said. Possibly even damages. But that's your choice. I looked out the window. A woman was standing outside with her dog. The leash was slack and the dog bounced around like it had waited all day for that walk. Freedom, I thought, is often found in small moments. And I wanted mine back. I don't want Amanda to be afraid, I said. I want her to understand that I'm still here. I'm still legally alive. I still get to choose where I live, and with whom. David nodded and opened a new document on his laptop. We'll start with a formal notice. Firm but not aggressive. It will include a demand to restore access to your home, a statement on the illegality of their actions, a warning that legal action will follow if needed, and a clause noting emotional harm. I watched as he typed. The clicking keys sounded like justice taking form, measured, not cruel. 20 minutes later, he printed the letter and handed it to me for signature. My hand ached, but I signed firmly. Where should we send it? He asked. To Amanda's house, I said. And Brian's office. Let them know this isn't a game. He gave a small nod. Understood. It'll be delivered by tomorrow evening. I stood and picked up my bag. I was about to say I'd look for an Airbnb when he spoke again. I have a guest room. You can stay with me. Not because I owe you, but because you're fighting. And I respect that. I wanted to refuse, manners, pride, habit. But instead I felt warmth spread through me. Like that day on Joan's porch. No threat. No pressure. Just a place where I wasn't an inconvenience. Thank you, I said quietly. And for the first time in months, I fell asleep without fear. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally begun. It all started with a short phone call. Mom, Amanda's voice trembled, even though she tried to sound calm. Did you get the letter? Maybe we can meet and talk. Just not over the phone. She made it sound almost like an invitation to lunch. But I could hear something else in her voice, tension. Maybe even fear. Maybe she and Brian still thought I'd come crawling back, so I say, all right, let's forget it. That I was too old, too tired, too unwilling to deal with lawyers. That I'd surrender. They didn't know me at all. I showed the message to David. He looked at me for a moment and said, you shouldn't go to their house. And don't be alone with them. Let's choose a neutral place. I'll come with you. I nodded. It wasn't fear. It was respect for myself. I wasn't about to stand in front of my own door again without a key. I picked a small cafe in Brookline, warm wood-paneled walls, the smell of cinnamon and cherry pie. Amanda and I used to go there when she was little. After school meetings on birthdays. For me, it was an anchor from a time when things were simple, mother and daughter, tea with lemon, conversations with no hidden motives. We arrived 10 minutes early. David wore a navy suit, businesslike but not cold. He didn't say much as we walked in, but I could feel him beside me. I wasn't alone. Amanda and Brian were already there, sitting by the window. They looked, well, let's say they weren't at their best. Amanda had makeup on and a strained smile. Brian looked like he hadn't slept, shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. I walked over, said hello, and sat down across from them. David sat next to me. No one offered a menu. No one ordered coffee. Amanda began. We didn't mean to hurt you. You said your arm hurt, you seemed tired. We were worried. We just wanted to make things easier for you. You made things easier, I said calmly, by changing the locks on my house and packing up my things while I was having tea with Joan in New Hampshire? She looked down. Brian let out a sharp breath through his nose. I pulled a few papers from my bag, bank statements. Withdrawals, $70, $120, $40, consistently. Not my signature, not my card. Amanda, are you sure this was about care? Brian finally looked up. We thought it was the right thing to do. You're elderly, it's hard to manage everything. So you took over my accounts without asking? I turned to him, steady. Amanda jumped in. We just wanted everything under control. You're alone, Dad's gone. Yes, Dad is gone. And that's exactly why I'm holding on to that house. Because we built it together. Because it's my life. And you're not a judge, not a court, not the state. You're my family, not my owners. Brian dropped his gaze. Amanda twisted a napkin between her fingers. David opened his folder and slid a few documents across the table. This is a formal request for Ms. Walker to regain full access to her property. We also recommend ceasing unauthorized expenses, stopping any further interference, and considering the sale of some assets to cover any debts. Brian snapped his head up. You want me to sell everything I've built for 15 years? I looked him in the eye. No. I want you to not go to prison. Know the difference. Silence. The only sound was a spoon clinking in someone's cup at a nearby table. Amanda pulled a ring of keys from her purse. She held them out. I didn't take them. That house didn't fall into my lap. I bought it with money from selling my parents' apartment. I paid that mortgage. I taught, I cooked, I made it through. And I won't let you treat me like something to be stored in a box. Brian said nothing. Amanda whispered, Mom, I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I nodded. Apologies aren't words. They're actions. So think carefully about your next move. For now, give back what's mine. She placed the keys on the table. I took them. No trembling. No rush. A few minutes later, they left. David and I stayed. He looked at me with quiet admiration. You handled that brilliantly. I shook my head. I just said the truth. Sometimes truth has to be spoken out loud, or everyone acts like it doesn't exist. I looked out the window. Snow was falling gently. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Really breathe. I didn't know what the next chapter would look like. But I knew this much. I'm not a footnote in someone else's story. I'm not a burden to be moved around. I am a woman, a mother, and the rightful owner of my life. I slid the key into the new lock. It turned with a soft click, and the door creaked open. I stood at the threshold like a guest in my own house. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The walls remembered, I could almost sense it, that I had once been locked out of this place. "It works," said David, stepping out of the car behind me. He had helped me change the cylinder, made sure only I had the keys now. "They won't get back in. The law's on your side." I nodded, thanked him. But the feeling of vulnerability didn't leave. I stepped inside. First, the entryway. Coats were hanging neatly. Shoes in place. But one drawer was slightly pulled out. In the living room, the cushions weren't quite how I'd left them. In the kitchen, a mug I always kept in the far back of the cabinet was now sitting by the sink. Small things. But I noticed every single one. I went upstairs to my bedroom. The books on the shelf were shifted, like someone had been looking for something behind them. The top of the dresser was dusty, except for 2 clean rectangles where a box of letters used to sit. In the hall closet, the box of winter things had been shoved in crookedly, as if someone had rummaged through it in a hurry. I walked through each room. I had taken all the important papers with me: jewelry, photos, heirlooms. Nothing was stolen. It wasn't a robbery. It was an invasion. Not of property, but of memory, of privacy. Of me. For the next few days, I barely left the house. Each morning, I opened all the windows to let in the June air. Then I cleaned. Washed the floors, rearranged furniture, threw out old newspapers, fluffed curtains, wiped every surface I could reach. I even reprinted the nameplate outside my mailbox. Megan Walker. Back where it belonged. Every motion was part of a ritual. A quiet reclaiming. This was my house. My sanctuary. My space. I wasn't just returning to an address. I was rebuilding control. And dignity. I opened an old box of family photo albums. Inside, the first house Jack and I bought together, Amanda in her prom dress, stick figure drawings by Ethan and Liam. I pulled one album onto my lap and flipped through it slowly, letting the memories rise. That was why I fought back, not for bricks, not for revenge, but for this. A few days later, a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan, my oldest grandson, standing awkwardly with a clumsy bouquet of wildflowers. He looked nervous. But he'd come. "Hi, Grandma," he said. "Can I come in?" I let him in. We walked to the kitchen. I set the kettle on. "It's not great at home," he said, staring into his mug. "Mom and Dad barely talk. Liam disappears most nights. It's just cold." I said nothing. Let him speak. "I miss the Sundays," he said. "When we'd come over here. You'd make pie. We'd all sit together. Can we do that again? This Sunday? Just dinner." I smiled. "I'll bake a pie," I said. "You invite whoever you want. If they come, they come. If they don't, it's not their time yet." That Sunday, I woke up earlier than usual. My old routines came alive in my hands. I had marinated the chicken the night before. Slid it into the oven, started on the mashed potatoes. The scent of rosemary and garlic filled the house. Then came the apple pie. My signature. Heavy on cinnamon. As everything cooked, I turned on the old family playlist. The same one we used to play during dinners when Amanda was little. I hummed along, letting something long lost settle back into place, not nostalgia but presence. My now. By 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. First came Ethan. He helped me set the table, chatted about school. Then Liam, quiet but kind. He brought a box of pastries. Together, we folded napkins, poured water into a pitcher, lit a candle at the center of the table. I had nearly given up hope for the rest when the door opened again. Amanda and Brian. No words. But they showed up. Dinner began tense. Amanda avoided my eyes. Brian barely spoke. Liam shared a story about a school project. Ethan added a joke. I laughed, really laughed, when they teased me about how many pies I'd baked over the years. Amanda smiled when I complimented her haircut. I didn't bring up the locks. The letters. The bank withdrawals. I gave them the one thing they never gave me. A safe space. No drama. No performance. After dinner, the boys went into the living room. I started washing dishes. Amanda joined. Brian stood off to the side, like he was waiting for something. "I sold the car," he said quietly. "Left the business. Paid off most of the debt. I'm job hunting now. It's hard. But I'm trying." I looked him straight in the eye. "You'll manage. But this time, do it honestly. I handed him the name of an old friend who ran a financial literacy program. They were looking for volunteers. Now you know how not to do things, I said. That's something. Amanda dried her hands and came over. Mom, I don't even know how to ask for forgiveness. I thought I was doing the right thing. I guess I was scared that one day you'd fall, and no one would be there. I understand, I said. But fear is a terrible decision maker. Next time, talk to me. Not for me. They left soon after. I sat in my armchair with a cup of tea. The house smelled like pie. Liam's napkin was still on the table. A couple of cups sat in the sink. Life. It wasn't going back. It wasn't revenge. It was a new chapter. No illusions. No fear. Just truth. And the right to belong, in my home, in my life, in the world. 2 months had passed since that Sunday, the first Sunday after everything, when I baked an apple pie again. The house had started to feel like mine again. It smelled like cinnamon and chicken broth, like books and clean laundry. It sounded like laughter and silence, like forks against plates and the particular kind of pause that only happens between family. Things weren't perfect, but I could breathe again. We had started over. Quietly. No dramatic speeches. Amanda called more often now. Liam brought me sketches from school, drawings where I could recognize my backyard, my roses. Ethan retold old family jokes, as if rehearsing a forgotten script. And yet I knew I wasn't done. There was one more step I needed to take. Not for them. For myself. One evening, sipping chamomile tea, I said it calmly. I'm leaving. For 3 months. I want to see the world. While I still can. Amanda froze. Brian turned his head from the couch. Where? He asked. I smiled. Australia. Then New Zealand. And if I can squeeze it in, Chile. I've always wanted to see the sky from the other side of the planet. Ethan's eyes went wide. Seriously? By yourself? Of course by myself. This is my gift to me. I've been saving. I have a separate account. It's time. Amanda asked quietly. Have you been planning this for long? I shook my head. No. I just realized. I don't have to ask for permission anymore. The first days of planning felt like fresh air. I applied for the visa, booked a flight to Sydney, bought a light waterproof jacket, and a suitcase with wheels that wouldn't get stuck in cobblestone. I downloaded every classic I never had time to read, and I packed a journal. Blank pages waiting. On the day I left, Liam tucked a note into my palm. Grandma, bring back a photo of a kangaroo. I'll hug you when you're back. Even Brian wrote, Safe travels. Thanks for reminding us, it's never too late to start again. Sydney met me with salt in the air and sunlight that felt like a song. I stood by the opera house, looking out over the water, thinking, I'm really here. Not as someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's retired teacher. Just as me. I wandered through the Museum of Contemporary Art, drank a flat white in a cafe overlooking the harbor, and scribbled in my notebook. I haven't forgotten how to feel alive. At the wildlife sanctuary, I stroked a koala's fur and watched kangaroos hop by. The guide told us they nap curled up in the sun like cats. I laughed, out loud, not the polite chuckle I'd used for years, but a real, ridiculous, joyful laugh. New Zealand was a poem. I drove down the South Island, where the lakes are so still they reflect the clouds perfectly. One day I ended up at a sheep farm run by a woman named May. She was older than me with stronger hands. She fed me rhubarb pie and told stories on her porch while her grandsons chased chickens in the background. And I thought, kindness lives everywhere. In a small cafe in Christchurch, I drank cinnamon coffee while unfamiliar music played. No one there knew my history. Not my age, not my past, not my heartbreaks or proud moments. I was just a woman, choosing a chocolate muffin. That was enough. Chile was wild and vast. In Patagonia, I stood at the base of a glacier, the wind cutting through me like a reset button. Then came Valparaiso, hills color ocean spray. I bought hot chocolate from a man on the pier and sat watching the waves crash against the dock. I opened my journal and wrote, For the first time in years, I can hear myself. And I'm not afraid. Every Sunday we'd talk on Zoom. Ethan showed off the pie he'd baked himself. Liam showed me the rosemary he planted in a little pot on their balcony. Amanda told me work updates. We didn't say I miss you every time, but it was there. In the smiles. In the quiet. One day Brian messaged, I'm volunteering at the financial literacy classes. You were right, it's useful. You're contagious, Megan. When I came home, they were waiting at the airport. Signs that said, Welcome back, Grandma. Balloons, flowers. Amanda reached me first. She hugged me tight, then softer, like she didn't want to break something sacred. We missed you, she whispered. And we have a surprise. The kitchen. Renovated. Brighter. Warmer. The kind I used to talk about years ago, but always put off because it seemed indulgent. We thought it was time. You've earned this, Amanda said. Liam handed me a notebook with a cover that read, It's never too late. Not for the road. Not for yourself. I stood in my home, the same but not. I had returned, yes. But not to what was. To something better. Something clearer. On my nightstand now sits a globe. Tiny flags mark where I've been, Australia, New Zealand, Chile. And a photo, me in a wide-brimmed hat, wind in my hair, ocean behind me. Beneath it, all of this is mine. Because I belong to myself. I'm not afraid of the word age anymore. The only thing I fear now is forgetting who I am. And I won't let that happen again. The evening felt like it had been made for remembering. The air was cool but not biting. I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, holding a cup of tea, watching the sky turn slowly to bronze. The old maple spread its branches like the arms of a familiar friend. Sometimes to understand where you are, you just need to sit quietly. The front door creaked. I didn't turn. I knew the steps behind me. Brian. He moved hesitantly, like someone unsure if he was welcome. I slid slightly, making room beside me. He sat down without a word. Mom, he said softly. The word hung between us, tentative. I've made a lot of mistakes. And I've lost a lot. I didn't look at him, but my voice was steady. But you kept something, Brian. Yourself. And a chance to rebuild. The maple leaves fell slowly, golden and indifferent. The sun was slipping behind the houses. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, I'm glad you couldn't open the door that day. That made me turn my head. Why? He stared at the street. Because if you had just walked in, I would have kept believing you were weaker than you are. That you'd let things slide. But you didn't. You showed me that home isn't just walls. It's respect. I nodded. His words were simple, but they landed deep. I didn't respond, but he knew I heard him. 6 months had passed. Some might say that's nothing. But to me it felt like I had shed a layer of skin every single week. Sunday dinners had become less of a ritual and more of a rhythm. People brought food, tiredness, conversation, silence. The real kind of family, where you don't have to perform. No one mentioned locks or letters. I didn't bring it up. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I had forgiven. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means you stop carrying the weight of it every day. It happened, and I got back up. That means I won. One Saturday, Ethan and Liam came over. They had a small box tied with a ribbon. This is for you, Grandma, Ethan said. Just because you're ours. I untied the ribbon carefully. Inside was a small silver pendant shaped like a door. On the back, an engraving. The one who keeps the house, even when locked out. I held it in my palm for a long moment before I put it on. I never took it off again. It rested quietly against my chest, a gentle reminder. I am here. I am home. Even if once I wasn't allowed inside. In December, I filled out another visa application. This time for Canada. Then Morocco. Not because I had to hurry, but because I wanted to see more. Because I could. Because it was my choice. I wrote in my notebook. Old age is not a pause. Not a lull. It's the first time you're fully on your own side. One morning, my neighbor Mrs. Rains, 2 houses down, stopped me on the sidewalk. She squinted against the sun and said, Megan, you look younger. I smiled. I just came back. From that part of myself I gave away in bits over the years. At home on my nightstand, there was a new notebook now. Not a to-do list, a dream list. Cities I wanted to see, Vancouver, Rabat, Kyoto. Books I'd never had time for. Recipes I wanted to learn. The word retirement now meant pause between adventures. And the word grandma didn't feel like a border anymore. It was a part of me, not the whole. Yes, I was a grandmother. But I was also a woman. Stubborn. Thinking. Curious. Someone who had returned. Liam once came to me with a school project. He had to write about someone who inspired him. He chose me. I read his essay and cried. Because it was true. Because he saw me. Not just as an old woman. Not just as grandma. But as a person. Amanda, quieter now, more present, said over tea one evening. Mom, you didn't just change yourself. You changed all of us. I nodded. Because she was right. I'm no longer afraid of the word age. I'm only afraid of forgetting who I am. And now I won't. I'm not just a mother. Not just a grandmother. Not just a former teacher. I'm a woman who came back to herself. Thank you for staying with me through the end of this story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to subscribe so you won't miss upcoming stories. It means the world to know you're here.